The Army of the Republic. The Roman constitution rested finally on the most successful military organization in history. The citizens and the army were one. The army, assembled in its centuries, was the chief lawmaking body in the state. The first 18 centuries supplied the cavalry. The, quote, first class formed the heavy infantry, armed with 2 spears, a dagger, and a sword, and protected by bronze helmet, cuirass, greaves, and shield. The second class had all of these except the cuirass. The third and fourth had no armor. The fifth had only slings and stones. A legion was a mixed brigade of some 4,200 infantry, 300 cavalry, and various auxiliary groups. 2 legions made a consul's army. Each legion was subdivided into centuries, originally of 100, later of 200 men, commanded by centurions. Every legion had its vexillum, its banner or colors. Honor forbade that this should ever fall into hostile hands, and clever officers sometimes threw it into the enemy's ranks to stir their men to a desperate recovery. In battle, the front ranks of the infantry hurled at the foe 10 to 20 paces away a volley of javelins, short wooden lances with an iron point, while on the wings, archers and slingers attacked with arrows and stones, and the cavalry charged with pikes and swords. Hand-to-hand combats with short swords were the final and decisive action. In a siege, massive wooden catapults, worked by tension or torsion, hurled 10-pound rocks over 300 yards. Immense battering rams, suspended on ropes, were drawn back like a swing and then released against the enemy's walls. An inclined ramp of earth and timber was built. Wheeled towers were pushed and hauled up this ramp, and from these towers, missiles were discharged upon the foe. Instead of the solid and unwieldy phalanx, 6 lines of 500 men each, which the early Republic seems to have taken over from Etruria, the legion was rearranged about 366 BC into maniples of 2 centuries each. Note: manipulus meant a handful of hay or ferns, etc. Attached to a pole, this seems to have formed a primitive military standard. Hence, the word came to mean a body of soldiers serving under the same ensign. Free room was left between each maniple and its neighbors, and the maniples of each succeeding line stood behind these open spaces. This formation made possible a rapid reinforcement of one line by the next, and a quick veering of one or more maniples to face a flank attack. And it gave play to the individual combat for which the Roman soldier was especially trained. The major element in the success of this army was discipline. The young Roman was educated for war from his childhood. He studied the military art above all others and spent 10 formative years of his life in field or camp. Cowardice was in that army the unforgivable sin, punished by flogging the offender to death. The general was empowered to behead any soldier or officer, not merely for flight from battle, but for any deviation from orders, however favorable the result. Deserters or thieves had their right hands cut off. Food in camp was simple: bread or porridge, some vegetables, sour wine, rarely flesh. The Roman army conquered the world on a vegetarian diet. Caesar's troops complained when corn ran out and they had to eat meat. Labor was so arduous and long that the soldiers begged for battle instead. Valor became the better part of discretion. The soldier received no pay till 405 BC and little thereafter, but he was allowed to share, according to his rank, in the booty of the defeated: bullion and currency, lands and men, and movable goods. Such training made not only brave and eager warriors, but able and intrepid generals. The discipline of obedience developed the capacity to command. The army of the Republic lost battles, but it never lost a war. Men molded by stoic education and brutal spectacles to a contemptuous familiarity with death carved out the victories that conquered Italy, then Carthage, then Greece, and then the Mediterranean world. Such, in outline, was the mixed constitution that Polybius admired as the best of all existing governments. A limited democracy in the legislative sovereignty of the assemblies, an aristocracy in the leadership of the patrician senate, a Spartan diarchy in the brief royalty of the consuls, a monarchy in occasional dictatorships. Essentially, it was an aristocracy in which old and rich families, through ability and privilege, held office for hundreds of years, and gave to Roman policy a tenacious continuity that was the secret of its accomplishments. But it had its faults. It was a clumsy confusion of checks and balances in which nearly every command could, in time of peace, be nullified by an equal and opposite command. The division of power was an aid to liberty and, for a while, a restraint on malfeasance. On the other hand, it led to great military disasters, like Cannae. It dissolved democracy into mob rule, and at last brought on the permanent dictatorship of the Principate. What astonishes us is that such a government could last so long, 508 to 49 BC, and achieve so much. Perhaps it endured because of its muddling adaptability to change, and the proud patriotism formed in the home, the school, the temple, the army, the assembly, and the Senate. Devotion to the state marked the zenith of the Republic, as unparalleled political corruption marked its fall. Rome remained great as long as she had enemies who forced her to vision, unity, and heroism. When she had overcome them all, she flourished for a moment, and then began to die.